Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Band Life podcast, or part 4 of our All Things Spotify series. Now, in this episode, I give strategies on how to work with Spotify's algorithm and how to really boost yourself on that platform. So without further ado, here's episode 14. Band Life Podcast! You are listening to the Band Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock! Tips and tricks and tactics on how to run your Spotify life. If you're going to be up there, do it properly. That's what I always say.
Okie dokie then.
Okay, are you ready for this? This is in no specific order. If you're enjoying this podcast and you're a generous soul, which I'm sure you are, why not buy Adam and myself a cup of coffee? You could do that at buymeacoffee.com/the Band Life Podcast. The first thing I would say is mindset-wise, I would try to think of Spotify more like it's a social media platform. If you think about how social media is expected to post consistently, they expect you to release consistently. You have things like followers and stuff like that. So basically, what Daniel Ek did, he took social media model and applied it to a music streaming site. The algorithm is a like-based algorithm. There's too many similarities for it to be just an accident, as it were. Once you kind of get your head around that, that's kind of a good starting point for you to kind of, okay, how am I strategically going to address Spotify? Got that mindset. The very first thing you need to do is make sure your music production is good enough. Okay?
All right.
If it doesn't stand up against everything else that's being released, it's not going to get listened to. Because you've got to think along those lines. The way that people are listening to music on Spotify is that they tend to be listening to it in playlists and things like that. They're going to hear one of your songs against a background of other songs. Now, a really good way of doing that is once you've done your recording and stuff, once you're happy with that, put it into a playlist of some sort. Even if you go on to like iTunes or Windows Media Player or something like that, get a few songs that will be in your genre and add it into the middle of that and just listen to it. And if your song, if it doesn't stick out in a negative way, then it should be fine. But also get other people to listen to that sort of self-made playlist, as it were. And say to them, right, do you think that this song, production-wise, as in how the drums sound and how the guitars sound and everything else and loudness and all this other stuff, does it fit? Does it work? Would you say that this is, the production quality on this is good enough to fit around those boundaries, as it were? If it doesn't, then maybe you need to go back and either get it remixed or remastered or whatever needs to be done to bring it up to those levels that it needs to be so that it fits in that playlist. Because that's how people are consuming music now. They're consuming it through a background of other songs.
What if you want your sound to sound a particular way? What if you wanted your music to sound a particular way? So, for example, there's some people that like that old 80s thrash sound. That's not going to be very modern sounding. There are some people that like that tape deck sound that some bands reproduce and gets a lot of traction that way. What are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah, so on your playlist, you would have that sound. So that's what I'm saying. You'd have to have songs that are close to your sound, the sort of thing that you're going for. So I think you'll find it very difficult to not find a bunch of songs that aren't in the realms of what you would want to hear at the end of the day, or the music that you're trying to produce. So if you've got that 80s thrash sound that you want, then you'd have the 80s thrash songs and your song in the middle of it. Well, how does that compare with the other ones? How does that work? If it doesn't sound right amongst those other songs, then you haven't achieved that sound. That's not the sound that you've achieved.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that that makes sense.
No, it does. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So and it goes back to what we were saying about the whole quality control thing of should a song be released? A lot of people are like, "Oh, I've written a song, produced a song, I need to release it." So, well, okay, do you? Is it actually ready for release? This is the other thing. The next thing I would do is try to get people to follow you on Spotify. I rarely see people asking them to follow them on Spotify, especially like nowhere near as much as people ask their fans to follow them on social media. The advantage of having a big following on Spotify is the algorithm will push you more. It's an indicator to the algorithm that people want to hear your music. I think it's very much an overlooked thing. When was the last time you asked anyone to follow you on Spotify?
Good point.
I never see artists do it, and it's such a big component for the algorithm of Spotify to be pushing music. If you're a big artist, you're going to get a lot of followers on Spotify because you're a big artist. Smaller artists need to push that a little bit more. So, from a marketing perspective, The other thing that I would suggest you do, and I see that quite a lot of this, is to link your social media accounts. I see a lot of artists, they have no social media links. And this is a big mistake because Spotify will crawl your social media accounts. And if you don't have that there, then you will, in a roundabout way, you'll be punished by Spotify. You're not going to get pushed algorithmically because they have no knowledge of whether or not you're blowing up. And this is why they're crawling your social media accounts. They want to see how engaged people are with your music, and if no one's engaging with your music, and again, the downside to that as well is that you have to be, you have to get your social media into you have to kick that up a bit and try to work that out. But if you don't have anything there, then the algorithm's just going to go, okay, well, we're not going to push any of this because we simply don't know if you're worth the time and the energy. You're an unknown entity, and people in the music industry, certainly on the business side of the music industry, they don't like unknowns at all. This is why record companies are so risk adverse and stuff like that, because they don't like unknowns. And Spotify is exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, because if they're going to invest time, money, and energy, then they want to make sure that you're a sure thing as much as possible, and they want an informed decision on that. And they only get that through data. And when they crawl your social media, if you're getting, lots of follows, lots of likes, lots of everything else, then they're going, okay, well, this band, they're gaining popularity because they're popular on social media. So the two kind of go hand in hand. It's not going to be a massive thing. It's not going to be like, we're not going to push anything at all. But you're not going to get pushed as much as someone who does have a larger social media presence, if that makes sense.
So it's basically like 12K following.
In a way, yeah. But also if you have that 12K following and then you haven't had much engagement for 6 months, when they come to crawl you again, they're going to be like, well, hang on a sec. Why have you got 12K followers, but then no one's engaging on your stuff? So when we come to crawl it, okay, well, maybe they're on a downward turn, and we're not going to push them because of that. So you need to keep. This is why one of the reasons why I always say consistency is key.
Yeah, regular, like once a week at the same day, same time.
And consistency doesn't mean you have to post 10 times a day. It just means that you have to post, try to post the same time all the time, if that makes sense. Also, I would have a great banner up there. I think when I did your deep dive, I looked at your banner for the Shallow Souls.
Was it good?
It was lovely. No, it was fine. It was good. But what I would do with banners is I would change the banner out a lot. And this is something I don't think bands do. I think they just throw a banner up there and be like, yeah, that'll do. And it's the same banner that's been there. They'll have it up there for years. And it's just, okay. It doesn't keep it fresh or anything like that. I would even have the banner saying, have some text on that banner saying, new release, blah, 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 blah. Something like that. Yeah, so you've got this visual thing straight, because that's the first thing that people look at once they get onto your profile, because it's there. So if you've got that banner coming up, it's a nice picture and it says new song, released on this date, if you've got a pre-release campaign going on, something like that, then they know to come back on that date, something like that, to check your music out for the new stuff, for example. I would say your banner could be quite a fluid thing. It doesn't have to be this thing that you just kind of throw up there and forget about. It should be something that you can use as it's an advertising banner. That's what banners are. They're there to advertise. That was the original purpose of banners. Also, your bio, I think, needs to be interesting, at least. Yeah,
We just done our bio as well. It is interesting. Our bio is quite interesting, though.
Well, that's good. Always have a story in there, because if someone's going to read it, at least entertain them in some ways. They're going to the effort of reading your bio. The usual one of we like Metallica. It's just a list of influences. Oh, okay, you and everybody else.
Yeah.
Tell the story of how your bass player lost his leg or something like that. Yeah. I would read that story. Come on.
You would. I thought you had to keep bios pretty brief, because when you pass your bio EPK pack over to people, especially reviewers, a lot of them are like, too long. It's got to have specifics in it. Otherwise, we're not interested.
Yeah, obviously you don't want to, have this massive essay of stuff, but keep it interesting. That's what I'm really saying. So go try to think beyond the usual. Oh, my music's influenced by such and such and such and such. And it's just kind of a standard thing. If you got, we met at this festival and it was really interesting because our bass player's only got one leg and he lost his leg because he was having a wank.
It's a spinal tap moment then, really.
Yeah, something like that. You don't have to go into huge amounts of detail. Don't get me wrong, but but have something a bit more interesting than I love Testament. Yeah, great. It's brilliant. So the other thing I would do is create playlists, and I would promote them as well. So algorithmically, Spotify likes playlists because you're telling them what sort of bands and what artists you want to be paired with. Mm-hmm. If you're pitching to playlist curators, they get an idea or a sense of how your music works within a playlist. But it's also great for social media promotion, because you can start promoting those playlists. When I've got artists saying that we've got nothing to talk about, we're not doing the social media thing because we've got nothing to talk about. I always say to them, well, create some playlists and talk about those playlists. And make sure you hashtag the artists that you're adding to those playlists, but also try to add bands, not just these huge bands, not just the Metallicas and the Testaments or whoever. Add bands that you play with live as well. Show them a bit of love.
Oh, we try, mate. We absolutely try.
Yeah, do that sort of thing. and it's a really good way of building a community through playlisting on Spotify. And I think that's kind of where the playlist should sit for artists is how can we create a community around this playlist? And if we're adding, this band to our playlist, hopefully that band will then add us to their playlists and we're leveraging each other's audiences in that way. I think playlists are a really good way of getting your music out there and a really good way of people consuming music. And I also think that's the way that people are listening to music now. People are rarely sitting down and listening to an album, as sad as that is for me personally, because I love sitting down and listening to albums and having that album experience. But most people just have a playlist on in the background while they're cooking or going down the gym or doing whatever they're doing. Having a playlist for yourselves is a really good idea, and it's a really good way of getting, really good tactic for Spotify anyway.
Yeah, well, I think we got about, we got one playlist on our Spotify, and it's changed because obviously we got the new Dean on board, but he's put all his song of bands he likes. We kept it to about 5. Same with JJ, same with me. Most of them are mine. We've done that. We've put a couple of known bands through the playlist as well. So
yeah, I would try to involve your community in it as much as possible. But also the way that I would do it is I would have individual playlists. So you'd have Adam's playlist, was it JJ's playlist and Dean's playlist. So you've got 3 separate playlists. And then I would promote those as much as possible. It gives you more content to work with as well. For your social media stuff. So, on JJ's playlist, he's added more Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah, that's right, man. You like Cyndi Lauper?
He's added our Doom version of Cyndi Lauper.
So would this be Spotify specific then?
No, I mean, you can do it wherever you want, really. Once you get into doing like huge amounts, it becomes difficult to kind of keep on top of everything, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I would start with Spotify, and if you can develop that, if you gain some skills from promoting it from that, and you want to do it, playlisting in other areas, then go for it. Why not? It's more exposure. The more exposure you get, the better. At the end of the day, that's how I would address playlists.
Okie dokie.
The other thing is the way in which we release music. For Spotify as a tactic, as a release tactic, I would release music every 4 to 6 weeks. I wouldn't do album drops necessarily and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think you said that before, haven't you?
Yeah, it's something to look at is a thing called the waterfall strategy. If you want to sort of Google that, it's all to do with the ISO. So I won't go too much into it in this. But if the main thing is if you're looking at Spotify like it's a social media platform, consistency is always going to be pushed by the algorithm. If you're releasing every 4 to 6 weeks throughout the year, algorithmically, you're going to get pushed more. Plus, it gives you a lot more opportunity to do parallel promotion, which I've talked about, I think, in the band ecosystem episode, I think was episode 6 or 7, something like that. Anyway, go look at that episode if you want to know more about parallel promotion. Because you're promoting your music month in and month out, it gives you more content to talk about on social media. So it gives you more for your audience, for your fans to get their teeth into. And your fans feel like you're giving more back than just, oh, here's my album. Now, go and buy, me merch. From a psychological standpoint, this is what the fans want to hear your music. So why not drip feed it over the course of a year as opposed to just going, okay, we've got 2 singles and an album drop. I think it's a much better way of doing things.
Got to keep pretty regular then, normally with dropping music and content.
Yeah, but I think if you've produced a 6-song EP, then you release that over the summer, for example, then all you're doing is you're going, right, the first song's coming out, April, May, June, July, August, or whatever. Song one's in April, song two's in May, then song three's in June, so on and so forth. It's just how you do it. It works. It works. If you look at a band, Spirit Box, they do this quite regularly. I think I saw they're releasing a song like next week. So they drip feed their music, and algorithmically things just pushed more purely because that's what they like. And that's what I say. I think what Spotify have done is they've looked at the model of a social media platform and they've applied it to a music streaming site.
I think you start to see bits of it creeping in. A lot of people say, why does that look vaguely familiar to that? It's got a social media thing going on, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you got followers and you got all this other stuff with it. There's, like I said before, there's too many similarities there for it to be a coincidence. So I think it's a thought out process that they've gone, okay, how can we turn music consumption from social media consumption into music consumption? Because social media consumption is making huge amounts of money. That's what
people are as well, aren't they? This is a community there, So.
Yeah, there's that. I would release every 4 to 6 weeks. The next thing is that I would pitch to playlists. Getting your songs onto playlists, it tells Spotify that you should be pushed algorithmically. Especially the editorial stuff, which again the followers come into account. If you're going to get on an editorial playlist, they look at your follower numbers and they'll go, oh, no, you haven't got enough followers, essentially. Or they'll go, oh, you got enough followers, yeah, let's give it a listen, give it a whirl. I think that there's kind of a threshold sort of situation there with that. But always remember the editorial releases, the editorial playlists are all pre-release. You can't pitch after you've put music out. So you have to pitch before, probably about a couple of weeks before your release. And obviously you can pitch directly through your Spotify for Artist accounts. There should be a little tab in there somewhere, and there's a whole sort of form thing to fill in and everything else, obviously, along with your upload. So stress this enough. Never pay to be playlisted. It goes against Spotify's policies. If you do, Spotify will probably pick it up. They're very good, or they're good-ish. Mm-hmm. They're good after the fact of picking up on who's being botted and things like that. And generally, if you're going to pay, they're going to use some kind of bot to spread your music, and they will pick up on that, and then you will get blackballed.
They are clamping down on it a lot.
Yeah, they're really on it, and it's just not worth it. I mean, plus, like, why would you pay for that anyway? You're paying for vanity. I think at the end of the day, if they're not real fans of your music, then why would you even really go for it? I can't.
Because everybody wants to get popular, don't they?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, everyone wants a certain level of attention for their music. Otherwise, why would you release it in the first place? I suppose. But I want a level of attention from people who actually want to listen to my music, who are involved in, who want to hear what I have to release. I don't want, I couldn't give a crap about people that don't like my music. And I know full well that most people will not like my music. This is another thing that I always say, it kind of blows artists' minds, that most people don't like your music. Get used to that fact. Every negative comment you get is from the majority of people who do not like your music. 7 billion people in the world, even if you were the Beatles, most people don't like your music. It's simple maths at the end of the day.
It's simple cruelty, man.
Yeah. Well, why should everyone like your music? That's what I say. Embrace it. Concentrate on the people that do. Don't worry about the people that don't. This is why I'm always like, yeah, you can troll me if you want. I don't care. I literally could not give two flying shits. If your opinion is negative, I've never put a negative comment on social media, because if I don't like something, I value my time too much for negativity, especially on social media. So I think it's a little bit sad when I feel sorry for people who are putting negative comments on social media. Because I'm like, well, why are you invested in that? Why are you invested in shit that you don't like? I don't understand it. I will only invest my time in something that I like and love. It's not worth the effort.
So quick recap then. So advice
Go
for
on then.
artists.
Recap me.
The waterfall strategy effect, which is a bit more proactive as opposed to dropping albums. And that would be release individual tracks, not album dumps.
Yeah.
Release usually every 4 to 6 weeks, provided you've got the content to do it. So an ideal strategy would be you got your album and you release one track every 4 to 6 weeks till the album's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you record an entire album's worth of content and you just drip it that way. So you could, it's very different. Like the band that I'm working with at the moment, they're doing a song a month as a monthly thing, and they're going to drop a song. But I was talking to a potential client. She wants to come in next year. So I'm taking bookings next year at the moment. Right. She wants to do a 12-song album. She wants to get the entire album done, and then she's going to drip it through. So it really depends on how you want your production to go, and a lot of that can come down to finance as well. When I kind of work stuff out, I always say that if you do everything as a bulk, you're going to get it slightly cheaper because you've got less time setting up and all the rest of it as such. So coming from a studio perspective, if I've got to set up the drums 12 times, that's going to be more time consuming than setting up the drums, 2 or 3 times or once, if that makes sense. From a time consuming perspective for studio time, you're always going to save a bit of money if you do things as a bulk because you don't have setup times. So I hope that makes sense.
No, I say we've done that before. Get on to editorial playlists a few weeks beforehand.
Yeah, if you can, and you have to kind of do your research and say, oh, I want to be on this playlist, and I think you have to state the reasons why, and there's a whole form to fill in. So when I say do your research, is to make sure that the song that you want to go on that playlist isn't like completely different from everything else on that playlist. If you're a doom metal band, you're not going to get on a classical playlist at the end of the day, or a hip hop playlist.
Wow.
But even going down to things like, well, what's the track length on those playlists? If every track is 3 minutes long and your song is 12 minutes long, you're probably going to struggle to get on that playlist. Because even editorial stuff, there's still someone there at Spotify that's putting that playlist together. There's still a human being there going, no, doesn't work, sort of thing. So
okay. Oh, all right then. Well, that's pretty much all I wrote down. And don't pay to go on the playlists because you'll get your ass whipped.
Okay, so nothing about the followers and that sort of stuff.
Well, I was just making some notes just then. I was on the Spotify there.
Okay, that's cool. Obviously, any comments that anyone has, feel free to leave them, and I will answer your questions as swiftly as I can. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have. And it's a very kind of broad thing. So if anyone, like I say, if anyone wants anything more specific, pop them in the comments, and I will happily advise you as best I can. I may even make you a little short video or something like that if your question's worth my time. And remember, if it's negative,
We like it anyway, do we?
We don't mind. Algorithmically, it really helps us. The more comments, the better. It's great. Whether it's negative or positive, but don't expect much. Of a response. Or at best you're going to get a snidey comment.
Yeah,
sort of thing. So yeah,
we don't mind the odd snidey comment.
We don't mind. Well, we give them out a lot, so if you give it, you gotta be able to receive it. I suppose. But like I say, I've never put a negative comment out. I've always moved on with my life. It's too short.
Yeah, you're a nice guy. You are.
I'm too nice, I think. So apart from my platform, which will just be kicking people off every 5 seconds. Get off.
It appears that way, doesn't it?
If you're enjoying this podcast and you're feeling a bit generous, why not buy Adam and myself a cup of coffee? You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/the Bad Life Podcast.
Bad Life Podcast!